These are the men and women of Beaver Valley, the bravest of the brave. They fought fearlessly for their country, their city, their community, and for the ideals we share as Americans. They served proudly in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Here now are their stories, their own experiences in their own words, the words of the heroes of Beaver Valley. On October 7, 2001, the United States launched Operation Enduring Freedom as a direct response to the September 11th attacks. The operation began with airstrikes in Afghanistan and grew to involve ground troops from every branch of the U.S. military. It would be the beginning of a long and expanding war on terror, with then-President George W. Bush hoping to root out terrorists and destroy their operations. Brandy Horchak enlisted in the Air Force after graduating from Ambridge Area High School in 1995. Shortly after her graduation from Air Force boot camp in 2001, the United States was attacked on September 11th.
When September 11th hit, I was with one of my sergeants, and we were just patrolling at Charleston Air Force Base. Everyone was going crazy, and we were all like, we were all getting this gear, and we were guarding the flight line. My Chief Brazil, he came over and he's like, "Hey, airman, you want to deploy?" And I was like, "Okay, sorry." and I said, "But I don't have you have to have a certain level to deploy or to do anything." And I said, "I don't have my level 3." And he's like, "You got it now, go get your stuff. You're deploying in 2 days." So that's how it happens, and you're kind of scared and excited at the same time. And then they just put us on a plane. They didn't tell us where we were going at that time. My first deployment was during Operation Infinite Justice. And then I think on the 25th of September of that year is when Operation Enduring Freedom kicked off, and I was already at an undisclosed location at that time.
Serving as part of the security forces, Horchak spent time in Saudi Arabia and the surrounding region during her first 2 deployments, where she and her fellow soldiers would forward deploy.
And I remember we were landing, when we were landing at our first location, we were in a C-130, and we had to do a combat landing because we didn't know if the area was secure or not. And then the C-130 starts to spiral down, because when you do a combat landing, you're spiraling down. And I just remember getting off the plane and laying down on the flight line and making sure it was secure. And then as soon as I got up, I was like, "Guys, I think I'm going to be sick." And they were like, "Oh, you're a rookie." And I just got sick. So.
Because of the nature of her job in the military, Horchak still cannot disclose some information about her service in the beginning of the war.
And while we were over there, we did a lot of, we set up an air base. We worked closely with the country of Oman. There was a lot of things that were going on there. There's a lot of things that I can't, talk about.
Horchak moved back and forth from different locations in the Middle East to her home in the United States. In 2003, she was sent to Kirkuk Air Force Base in Iraq.
At that time, I was an M60 gunner. We were more doing a lot of the security in the towers, at the gates, and we would spend maybe 16 hours sometimes a day in our tower. We were very short-manned over there, so it was tough for those first couple months. And we just started building with sandbags and things like that just to fortify everything.
As part of a multinational coalition, troops from allied countries helped the United States in their operations. One of those troops, Latvian soldier Vitaly Yevzhukovs, helped where necessary.
And for us, it was a great opportunity to go, especially in Iraq, working close to United States, for good cause. Yeah, we were excited, yeah. And basically with us, with Latvian Army, all of us were volunteers, and nobody said no. Everyone says, yeah, we go. I loved it. Still miss it. Originally, our platoon was consisted of 40 people only, and we flew to Iraq as we were Army, a cargo team, to start building base for more troops coming in. Yeah, we Latvians all of us jacks of all trades, So yeah, and I was working there on a flight line for 4 months, and then United States security force were short of people. They needed 4 people, and I was one of those 4 people, and that's it. And I met Brandy there.
V, actually, when they volunteered, V came up onto one of the towers, and I was there. We just formed a really close friendship. When you're up there for 16 hours, you kind of get to know each other.
Females in the United States Security Forces came as a slight surprise to the Latvian troops.
I mean, we were surprised in a positive way. It was cool.
He's like, I was surprised there was women like carrying like huge weapons. In security forces, you train the exact same way. So if a male is doing something, you're doing the same thing. So you have that mutual respect. I think the main thing is, do you have their back and do they have your back? And now with women in combat, it's for the best. I can tell you what, there's girls that can outrun, outmaneuver, outshoot guys, so it's a fact.
Together, Brandy and Vitaly would experience the never-ending stresses of war.
There's constantly being bombed, constantly being RPG'd, hit with rocket-propelled grenades. It was always going on. So you'd get off work and you go to kind of try to relax, and before you know it, the sirens are going off. You're throwing your Kevlar on. You're going to, the bunkers or whatever. And the crazy thing though is security forces, of course, we don't. We get everybody into the bunkers, and then we have to go out and try to figure out where it's coming from, and then we let the Army guys know. Next day, same thing. It was very intense in Iraq in 2003. There was a lot of people dying. There was a lot of people going out, and you don't know when they're coming back or if they come back. I don't know, my first deployment was tough, but these were ones where we saw a lot of things coming through the gate. We saw guys that were coming back pretty banged up.
After her service, Brandy kept in touch with Vitaly. They eventually married in South Carolina in 2006. They now have 3 children. Even though their deployments to war zones are over, the effects of war still linger.
When I came back, I was mean all the time. I was tense all the time, and I was mad at everything. And our family was suffering. I'm yelling at the kids, and I'm yelling at him, and and I don't know what I want to do. Sorry. And you just can't find your place anymore. And so you try to get a job, and you don't fit in, and you're thinking about the exits, and you're thinking about crazy stuff that you think, God, this is not what normal people think about. You think you're crazy, and people don't want to be around you, and they start to, they start to leave, and you're left by yourself. All these things, you just keep going darker and darker and darker, and unless someone's there to pull you out, that's why we have 22 veteran suicides a day. And V's like, we have to do something. You have to do something. Our family's falling apart. And he said, you used to love boxing when you were young.
Brandy and Vitaly would sign up at a local boxing club in an attempt to quell her PTSD. It worked.
I think after about 4 months,
4 or 5 months, yeah.
I was like a new person. I can get that anxiety out. I was finding an outlet for all this, but I wasn't finding that camaraderie. My husband was the only comrade that I had around here. And so he was like, wouldn't it be great if we could do something where boxing is involved and we bring all these veterans and all these first responders together? And he said, let's quit our jobs and put everything we got into this.
They would soon open the Will of the Warrior Boxing Club in Baden with the goal of creating an environment for veterans where they can not only release anxiety, but be a part of an understanding community as well.
It just looks like a boxing club from the outside, but what it consists of is the healing process.
Through their Will of the Warrior program, Brandy and Vitaly have been reaching out to the veteran community in an attempt to not let anyone slip into the darkness of PTSD.
I always say, like, when we come out, we're kind of in the shadows, and it's very hard to get us out of the shadows. It's a blessing that we were able to go through it and come out okay. I don't think I would change anything.